Headlines now. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer shows support at a pro-Israel event amid comments deemed anti-Semitic from his colleague, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
I am a part of a large bipartisan coalition in Congress supporting Israel. So let's have debates on policy instead of impugning the loyalty of Israel's supporters.
Omar suggested pro-Israel organizations pay members of Congress for support. She later apologized. The Washington Capitals head to the White House today to celebrate their 2018 Stanley Cup win. Many players, including goalie Braden Holtby, say they'll sit this one out. Holtby saying, quote, he needs to stay true to his values. Others say they'll pass because of the president's rhetoric. Some players, though, are excited to visit the White House, including star player Alex Ovechkin. Let's look at your headlines. Steve?
All right, Jillian, thank you. Meanwhile, after nearly 2 years, that long-awaited special counsel report clearing Trump on any collusion came out over the weekend. A summary did. So what does this outcome say about how the probe began in the first place? And is it time to perhaps investigate the people who were the investigators? Former Department of Justice prosecutor James Trusty joins us right now from Washington, D.C. Jim, good morning to you.
Hey, Steve. Good morning.
You know, a lot has been made about, we were just talking to Jay Sekulow about how it all started with, it seems like, the story from the FISA court and the dossier and stuff like that. Somebody sold the FBI on an investigation into somebody running for president, which is extraordinary. Is it time to investigate how it all started?
Well, I think those are fair questions. I mean, the reality is, we don't have an answer yet about the FISA court, about the use of the dossier of Christopher Steele meeting with DOJ and FBI officials after he was fired. Right. So I think it's fair game, and hopefully we'll get some of that from the Inspector General. I don't think it's foolproof, but hopefully the Inspector General is going to touch on that and give us a little sense of process, because that's a fundamental fairness thing that we should all want to know about.
And of course, at the very core, it was all about trying to figure out, did the Trump people collude with the Russians? And invariably, some people close to the president got indicted and sentenced because they said inappropriate or wrong things to the FBI. You say the whole prosecution of these false statements is a red flag to you.
Well, it is. I mean, where I work, we represent folks that get caught up in white-collar investigations, and it seems to me that there's an awful lot of subjectivity to the use of these 1001, as they call it, false statement cases. It was the coin of the realm in the Trump investigation. There was 4 or 5 people that might have not had any criminal exposure, didn't do anything wrong, didn't collude, obviously, but at the end of the day, they get tripped up because they have what's called a convenient memory lapse. They may or may not remember something accurately, and subjectively, that puts them in a felony in federal court. So it was sworn off in the Hillary Clinton probe. It was used frequently in the Trump probe, and I think that's a fair area for all of us to question.
So how do you fix that?
Well, I think you have to try to drag some people in for oversight on this narrow topic, not trying to relitigate everything to do with this probe, but really drill down and find out what's the use of discretion that prosecutors and agents are using when it comes to these false statement prosecutions.
Excellent point. Jim Trusty, thank you very much for joining us on this Monday after a busy weekend right here on the channel. Thanks, Jim.
Sure. Good to see you.
All right. Coming up on this telecast on this Monday, Kellyanne Conway, Congressman Jim Jordan, and Dan Bongino. Plus, Mike Huckabee coming up next on how the report came out and the president has been exonerated. In his words, you didn't expect the Democrats to say, you know what, we were wrong.
I honestly thought that they would have the good sense to just shut their pie holes after all this came out, but they didn't. And here's the thing we need to remember. There's 3 things I think have to be put in context. Number 1, there was a conspiracy, apparently, a cover-up, and an attempted coup d'etat. But it was not by anyone of the Donald Trump campaign. It was by people inside the government who tried to upend this president and overturn the election. That's serious. It absolutely demands an investigation and charges if they find evidence. Second thing, for all this time, we were told Donald Trump didn't even want to be president, that he really didn't run because he thought he would win or wanted to win. He didn't want to win. He just wanted to increase his brand. Now, let me ask you something. If he didn't want to win, why would he have ever even conspired with the Russians to begin with? He would have done everything he could to make sure he didn't win. Now they're saying, well, he colluded with Russians so he could win, but he didn't really want to win. You can't have it both ways, Democrats and media. And the third thing I think is important, who was in charge of the government when all these things happened? Who was running the government?
President Obama.
prior to the election. It was not Donald Trump. It was not Corey Lewandowski. It was not Paul Manafort. It was none of these people. It was Barack Obama, Susan Rice. It was James Clapper, John Brennan. It was Jim Comey, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Bruce Orr. They were the ones in government. Donald Trump had zero power. Why aren't we hearing the fact that when everything happened, the supposed Russia collusion, these were the people who were supposed to be protecting America, and they were asleep at the switch. And if it happened because they let it happen, and they weren't competent enough to stop it.
What about these Democratic candidates or Nancy Pelosi? Should they be sitting down with their entire party and saying, just let this rest, no more on this, because it's going to hurt us in 2020? This is a great move for the president, or it's going to be favorable for the president in 2020. His approval rating's probably going to go up because of this, because the American people aren't stupid. They've spent a lot of their taxpayer dollars on this investigation. So what should the Democrats be telling their party now?
Well, they need to be blaring out on loudspeakers the song from Elsa in Frozen, Let It Go, Let It Go. They're not going to do that. I mean, it's evident by the things they've been saying over the past 24 hours. And frankly, I'm stunned by both the media and the Democrats who don't have even the courtesy of acknowledging that this is a president who has been falsely accused, as well as the people around him. For 2 years, they have relentlessly attacked him and accused him. And here's a little word to Adam the Schiff. Adam, you've been saying you've got evidence. Show up with a box full of it and empty it out on the Capitol steps, or shut the heck up.
Governor?
Either provide it or prove that you don't have it.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think he will not listen to you, and the investigation is going to move forward. And you know that Elijah Cummings has already put out all those requests for documents, and some have come in. In light of this Mueller probe, if they are requesting that you give documents, or someone that you know give documents who was involved somehow with the Trump campaign, do you start to stiff arm them? Do you say, no, enough? I'm not wasting my time? In the case of a lot of these people, they've gone bankrupt because they have to get an attorney that's going to represent them at a clip of a minimum $50,000 every 3 months.
Well, something that one of my political mentors, Dick Morris, taught me early in my political life was this. Don't throw the first punch, but once you're punched, counterpunch, and counterpunch hard. What we need to do as Republicans is let them punch and then counterpunch and open the investigations. Remember, we have the executive branch and the Senate. All they've got is the House. Punch hard. Let Lindsey Graham and the Senate Judiciary Committee go after who were the conspirators. Who were the ones who, inside the Department of Justice and FBI, actually conspired to bring down this president and chase them to justice? Order the Attorney General to do the same thing.
Okay, let's see what happens. In the words of Mike Huckabee to Democrats, let it go, let it go. Mike, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Or counterpunch.
All right.
You bet. Take care.
Look at all the great guests. Final hour, Fox and Friends.
The second part was the obstruction. He said there was not enough sufficient evidence to make a determination one way or the other.
So after 2 years of a lot of people in the mainstream media saying that there was evidence of collusion, it must have killed him to put things on the covers of the papers today, like the New York Times. It says Mueller finds no Trump-Russia conspiracy. The New York Post, no collusion, no obstruction, Ainsley.
And then the Daily News, Teflon Don.
Yeah,
Just some of the headlines.
Yeah, the Daily News now down to just being a flyer for the 6 people that read it. The Washington Post, Mueller finds no conspiracy. Joining us now to discuss this and so much more, Bret Baier. You know him on Special Report. He's here early to help us out, as he helped us out all throughout yesterday. Bret, what do you think the next step is as we start unwinding what these 4 pages mean?
Morning, guys. I think there'll be a lot of calls for transparency. You've already heard them from Democrats wanting to see the full report. I think that the Attorney General is going to be true to his word, that he's going to put out as much as he can without putting out grand jury testimony, for example, implicating somebody who's not named or charged, and also classified material. So the whole meme on social media and elsewhere that this is the Attorney General's letter and you can't trust this because this is a politically appointed person is a little far-fetched, in that he wrote the 4-page letter alongside the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, who has been the the champion of the left and a lot of lawmakers on the Democratic side. So I think there's going to be a push to release as much as you can.
Well, you know, Brett, over the last couple of years, we've heard two different messages from a lot of members of the mainstream media and Democrats as well. One was, you know, we trust Robert Mueller. As soon as his report comes out, we're going to, you know, that will be what actually happened. But at the same time, there have been other people who have suggested regarding this, you know, there obviously was collusion and they have evidence about it. And now, fast forward to today, a lot of those same people not trusting Mueller and doubling down, saying we're going to have another investigation.
Yeah, and if you can't come to the conclusion where on the collusion part, the conspiracy, the cooperating with Russia, that the Mueller probe, which the Attorney General quotes from in that 4-page letter, finds that no American tied to the Trump campaign or the president cooperated or conspired with the Russians to interfere with the 2016 elections. That's after 500 witnesses, 2,800 subpoenas, all of the resources of the special counsel that the Attorney General said were not hindered in any way, shape, or form throughout this whole thing. I do think there's going to be a call, guys, for, as the president said, a look into the other side and how this all started. And I thought the best tweet yesterday was James Comey tweeting this picture of himself looking up into these trees saying so many questions, and then Senator Lindsey Graham retweeting that saying could not agree more, see you soon. Suggesting that he's going to call Comey back up.
Do you think there's an appetite in America to go further on this investigation to how it came to be, to find out more about the FISA warrants and the build-up to this investigation?
I think there's definitely an appetite on the right. There's definitely an appetite for folks who think that this has been, you know, really hammered again and again on the left as collusion, and that the president is an agent of Russia. So they want to get to the bottom of it so it doesn't happen again. I do think collectively, if you poll America, you might get to the point of Mueller fatigue. And we'll see, because this is a crucial question as you head into the election, what Democrats are going to do going forward.
Yeah, we had Rudy Giuliani, Jay Sekulow, both of those president's attorneys that have been working on this for several years with the president on our show earlier. Both of them, of course, very happy to find out the results of the Mueller investigation. This is what Rudy Giuliani had to say, Brett.
Here's the thing to understand, and I understood this from the very beginning, which is why I'm so passionate about it. He didn't do any of this. The man is an innocent man. Again, whether you like him or you don't like him, and I happen to, you know, love him. I mean, he's one of my very good friends. And to see him go through this was horrible, just as a friend. To see him go through to the President of the United States really broke my heart as a patriot. The president shouldn't be distracted with made-up stories. Collusion is made up. If his collusion is made up, well, then how crazy is it? How could you have obstruction? Plus, please, guys, all of you, wake up. The investigation wasn't obstructed. This investigation is much more of a shame than people know, and it was conducted in a more shameful way than people realize. We had an innocent man we were defending. I know he's the President of the United States, but he didn't collude. He didn't obstruct. This investigation wouldn't have taken place if he obstructed. So both of them were bogus theories. It's a horrible thing when you have to represent somebody who's innocent. I mean, I could see in his eyes sometimes he would say to me, I didn't do anything with the Russians. I didn't do anything. How could they do this?
Brett, what's your reaction?
Well, I think that, you know, I tweeted out yesterday, no matter what your ideology is and where you sit, this is a good day for America, because the special counsel did not find an American tied to the Trump campaign or the president who colluded, conspired, cooperated with Russia. That is good, period, the end. Now, the other stuff will be fought out as far as the specifics. Right. I think Alan Dershowitz rightly said, you know, it's interesting that they put in all of that here, both sides of the obstruction. It's the Attorney General's call on that front.
All right. Brett, thank you very much. We'll be watching Special Report
Brett.
tonight. I have a feeling I know what your lead story is. We'll see you later. Meanwhile, let's bring in we'll bring in Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president. Kellyanne, Brett was just talking about the James Comey tweet. This, for the folks who do not follow you on Twitter, you tweeted this out yesterday. Congratulations, President Ron Donald Trump. Today you won the 2016 election all over again. You got a gift for the 2020 election. They'll never get you because they never get you. You wrote.
I did. And those who let this lie fly for 2 years, haranguing and harassing and trying to embarrass and worse those of us connected to the 2016 campaign, beginning with the president and his own family, really do owe America an apology. But more importantly, they never legitimized him as president because they never saw it coming. And those who have now spent 22 months wasting their time, really 2.5 years since the day he was elected, are now running out of time for 2020. They've made Donald Trump look like the victim here because he has been the victim here. And let me be very specific about certain individuals. The head of the Democratic National Committee, Tom Perez, and let me quote him. He said repeatedly that there is, quote, mountain of evidence of collusion between the campaign and the Russians. This is a man whose own DNC, along with Hillary Clinton's campaign, first funded that phony dossier that got us to where we are. Then you have Adam Schiff. Talk about an oxymoron. This man heads the Intelligence Committee in the House. He said, quote, he believed that the scandal was of a size and a scope probably bigger than Watergate and that there's plenty of evidence of collusion. He ought to resign today. He's been on every TV show 50 times a day for practically the last 2 years, promising Americans that this president would either be impeached.
But Kellyanne, he's a politician. That's what politicians do.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. But talk about collusion. They have been aided and abetted. That's right. That's what politicians do. And my tweet last night saying they'll never get you, President Trump, because they don't get you. The get you part is how he got elected. The non-politician disruptor. Americans didn't want business as usual. But think of all the time and money that has been wasted, not just on this investigation, which is the second most expensive investigation by day since the special counsel was created 40 years ago. But think about all the people who are suffering from drug addiction, who couldn't get the media to cover on the greatest scourge of our times. Think about all the people languishing in prison who were ignored even though this president put forth criminal justice reform. Think about all the property owners and taxpayers and small business owners who don't know that the deregulation is there to help them. People ran around basically calling the president of the United States a Russian asset or a Russian agent.
And John Brennan in particular. John Brennan in particular.
People, now many TV lawyers, many people letting the lie fly.
Do you think the president, as talked about today in Axios, according to their sources, is going out for vengeance and will call for some people in the media to be fired?
I talked to the president very late last night after he returned from Mar-a-Lago, and he said none of that. But I will repeat to you what I said to your own Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday around January 29th, 2017, which is that we were going to have joint custody of this country for 8 years, we being the White House and the media, and that we are duty-bound together to give the American people the truth and the facts that affect them. Yeah. Not people curating and doing advocacy journalism, but give people news they can use. Give people information. Why do these veterans actually know everything that's available to them? And so what I told Chris Wallace then is not a single person in the media who got the 2016 elections so chronically and embarrassingly wrong lost their jobs. And they probably won't hear too. Look what they did to Brett Kavanaugh. The second most popular story in the Trump presidency was the Russian collusion fake hoax nonsense. The most covered stories I read last night in a condensed period of time was Brett Kavanaugh. And they treated him the same way. That was a microcosmatic version of what they tried to do to President Trump and his campaign and his family for the last 2 years. It's a drive-by. They abandon all standards, all personal ethics, all professional duty. Do you realize major papers in this country won Pulitzer Prizes over their reporting on something that is totally fake? Do you realize that another cable station, over 13,000 stories combined by 2 major print outlets and 2 major cable stations, not named Fox News. And as somebody who engages with those people as much as I can and tries to get out there, we basically were being told we were liars. I was the campaign manager busting my hump, as did my colleagues, for those last 3 months in 2016, building on the great work that Donald Trump, who won that election fairly and squarely, had done for a year and a half before that. And basically, when you're talking about collusion and talking to Russia and conspiracies and obstruction of justice for 2 years with no proof other than people leaking to you,
right,
or you just guffawing with the anchor next to you and the fake lawyers on TV and the journalists who are pretending to be lawyers for that moment, when you're calling us all, you're saying that we did not win fairly and squarely. You, in fact, running around, jutting your jaw out and saying, I'm worried about the effect on the institutions. You were disparaging the institutions. You were demeaning and deriding our great democracy, the presidency of the United States. Adam Schiff should resign. He has no right as somebody who has been peddling a lie day after day after day, unchallenged and not under oath. Somebody should have put him under oath and said, you have evidence? Where is it? Because Bob Mueller already ran the fair and the full investigation. And any partisan, politicized investigation from here on in will never have the credibility of the Mueller investigation and the credibility of Attorney General Barr and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, what they've done here.
Kellyanne, people who voted for him are really, many of them are very frustrated that this has gone on for so long. And then in the end, there was no collusion, yet Hillary Clinton got off scot-free. Kimberly Stossel had a fabulous editorial op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, and she said the FBI unleashed its powers on the presidential candidate. Rod Rosenstein even said he was alarmed by the bias against President Trump from Strzok and Page. The president yesterday said it is time to investigate the other side as well. If you're going to investigate me this way, you got to be fair and investigate the other side. What happens next?
Our democracy and the truth should bear nothing less. And those who have run around for 2 years thinking they can get this president, they can frog march him out of this White House, just did two things. One, they legitimized all calls for a full investigation of how we got to this place in the first place. Let's see everything that attended to the FISA warrant. Let's see all of the communications happening at the top levels of the FBI during the Obama administration and during getting that, quote, insurance policy, deriding those Trump voters and the rest of us as filthy Walmart shoppers and all the other slights, all the snark and bark from the elitist intellectual snobs.
Well,
let's see it all. Let's let it all hang out. They did two things. They did that. And the other thing they've done is they've showed that that the Department of Justice and the FBI cured itself very quickly. What Mueller and Barr and Rosenstein and the rest of them here have done is a great service to our democracy. They repaired us because what was happening at the highest levels of the FBI was an absolute disgrace. And those who legitimized and gave Comey and McCabe, imbuing them this credibility, these great book tours, shame on them too, because Comey, we know, has lied under oath and he's a big leaker. Those leaks got us to where we are. The leaks and the accusations gave us the obstruction of justice nonsense.
Right. Kellyanne, we had Mike Huckabee on about 20 minutes ago, and he suggested, as we look at how this all started, he said, look, it happened on Barack Obama's watch, and he listed some names of people in the West Wing. So the big question is, how high does this go?
Well, let's see. We should see, shouldn't we? Because those who have called for a full and fair investigation, I must get the truth. We will not stop. Facts first. Have at it. We've got time. You have not stopped. You've not winced a single moment. You've not reflected or been reluctant to waste $25, $30 million of taxpayer dollars. 13 requests of foreign governments. Pen registers, subpoenas, 500 witnesses, all these subpoenas. Right. So, and you came up with nothing. No obstructive conduct, no collusion, no more indictments. And by the way, nobody named Trump or Kushner indicted, folks. And we were, people would whisper in our ears, look out, don't be in a meeting with them. Everybody's got a duck. I mean, what a bunch of nonsense. Right. And nobody will reflect because they listen to that. But let's let it all hang out. Let's see what happened with the FISA warrants, the phony dossier. Let's see what Hillary Clinton. Oh, why are you still talking about Hillary Clinton? Because, folks, you wouldn't let the 2016 election go.
Kellyanne?
And now you're running up against 2020, and you got a big old nothing. Beto O'Rourke 2 days ago said there's beyond a shadow of a doubt that the president colluded. What is he talking about? Right. There should be a reckoning. and because our democracy bears nothing less.
We don't know
you.
what counter he was standing on when he said that, but we'll look back.
Stop violating all types of federal and state health laws by standing on the counter. Go home and see your kids once in a while, Beto.
Kellyanne, look at your phone, because I think you got 3 text messages. It could be from your children during that appearance.
She got a lot of balls in the air. Kellyanne Conway, thanks so much.
Kellyanne.
Take care.
All right, Jillian.
It's probably the second biggest day for the administration after winning the election. I mean, it's got to be the second happiest day for them.
It's the day
I'm sure they're all popping champagne. Glad it's all over. Okay, Jillian is upstairs. She has some headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
That's right. Good morning. Let's begin with a Fox News alert. And right now, the Israeli military is reinforcing troops along the Gaza border following a rocket attack overnight. 7 people were hurt when a rocket from the Gaza Strip destroyed a home north of Tel Aviv. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu now vowing retaliation and cutting his trip to the U.S. short. He will meet with the president today and fly home immediately after. Viking Cruise Line working to send passengers home after a near disaster at sea. The ship reaching port in Norway following hours of chaos when its engines failed during a storm. Nearly 500 passengers airlifted off the cruise before the ship restarted its engines. At least 20 passengers were hurt. The first wave of defendants accused in a massive national college admissions scandal will face a judge today. At least 12 of the 50 people charged are expected in a Boston courtroom. 7 of the 9 college coaches involved will be present, including fired legendary USC water polo coach Jovan Vavic. Actress Lori Loughlin heads to court next week. New England Patriots star Rob Gronkowski is retiring. The tight end making the announcement on Instagram, saying he will, quote, move forward with a big smile after 9 seasons and 3 Super Bowl wins. His 2017 victory leading him to the White House, where this happened.
Can I just... I think I got this, but thank you. Maybe. All right, thanks, man. I'll see you in a minute.
Who could forget that, right? Gronk cracking up the room during a press briefing. Tom Brady posting a tribute to his friend online, writing, quote, our team was almost unbeatable when you were on the field. I'm sure he's going to be just fine and having a great time.
He'll do okay.
He seems like he's so fun.
I know.
In all the parades, he takes his shirt off and hands beers out to the crowd.
He'll be like Shaq. 1 million endorsements will be coming his direction, and they don't tackle you anymore. All right, thanks so much, Jillian. 19 minutes after the hour. This morning, a brand new migrant caravan, I'm not kidding, is are calling it an investigation into the investigator. So what's next for the members of Congress to look into? Joining us now, a member of the House Oversight Committee, Congressman Mark Meadows, and ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, Congressman Jim Jordan. And if you want to know why President Trump was able to sustain this fight, it was because of these 2 gentlemen had a lot to do with that. First off, individually, your reaction to the 4-page conclusion that we all read yesterday. Jim?
Well, I think, remember 4 numbers, 19, 40, 500, and 2,800. 19 lawyers, most of them Clinton Democrat lawyers, 40 FBI agents, 500 search warrants, and 2,800 subpoenas over 22 months. And the findings come back and they say what? No more indictments coming, no sealed indictments, no collusion, no obstruction. This is as strong a statement as you could see. This is good for the president. More importantly, it's good for the country.
Yeah, we're going to roll the full screen in, and it's similar stats of 2,800 subpoenas, 500 witnesses, a cost of between $25 and $40 million. Mark, you talked to the president probably as much as anybody on the Hill. How much has this weighed down on him and affected him?
Well, I mean, it's weighed down on him from doing his job. I mean, you've got a president who loves this country, who's committed to this country, and yet each and every day there were lies after lies after lies told about him, you know, and some by in the media, but some by Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler, the same people that are going to try to switch the narrative and say, oh, well, this is not an exoneration. I can tell you it's a total vindication of the president, but it's not just for the president. It is indeed for the American people who trusted this president, who voted for him, and now can say to the mainstream media, you know, why have you lied to us for 2 years? It's about time.
Yeah, here is Jerry Nadler yesterday. He didn't miss his opportunity to go to the streets of New York, get heckled, and speak out.
We will ask the Attorney General to testify before the House Judiciary Committee. We will demand the release of the full report. The Attorney General's comments make it clear that Congress must step in to get the truth and provide full transparency to the American people.
So,
Brian,
as predicted.
Brian, Brian, one of the big things, you hear Jerry Nadler there. If he wants to get to the truth, let's bring in Glenn Simpson, who started this with a fake dossier, who actually has claimed the fifth. Let's go ahead and bring in a lot of the individuals who put this false narrative out there. If we really want to get to the truth, let's be about the truth.
Brian, Mark's exactly right. 81 letters Jerry Nadler sent out because this wasn't the bombshell they hoped for. In fact, it was just the opposite, the Mueller report. So they're starting a whole new fishing expedition. 81 letters to 60 different people, but two key people he didn't send a letter to. He didn't send one to Glenn Simpson, and he didn't send one to Christopher Steele, the foreigner hired by the Clinton campaign to write the dossier that was the basis for this whole twisted deal.
Before I let you go, I want to bounce something off you a little bit different. The Investor Business Daily does this headline that captured my attention. It says, Obama, Hillary, and Brennan combined to take down Trump. And in it, they have this quote, James Clapper to Anderson Cooper, CNN. If it weren't for President Obama, we might not have done the intelligence community assessment that we did that set up a whole sequence of events that are still unfolding today, including Special Counsel Robert Mueller. President Obama is responsible for that. It was he who tasked us to do that intelligence community assessment in the first place. He was trying to credit Obama, but what in retrospect did he do?
Well, we do know, based on certain text messages and actually meetings that took place between the Department of Justice, the intel community, and indeed the White House, that there was an involvement at the highest levels of government. That being said, it requires further investigation to make sure that we do that we do not weaponize the intelligence community, the Department of Justice, or the FBI. And I know Jim and I are committed to getting to the bottom of it.
And I'm going to have one question, try to end on a positive note. Hakeem Jeffries, I'll paraphrase. He says, I am going to search hard to find common grounds to work with the president. Do you believe him, Jim?
Well, let's hope so. It doesn't sound like Mr. Nadler's looking to do that. It doesn't sound like Mr. Schiff is looking to do that. It doesn't sound like Chairman Cummings is looking to do that. So I appreciate what Mr. Jeffries has said, and hopefully we can find some common ground, deal with the crisis on the border, build the border security wall, do some things that need to be done to deal with our debt situation. Right. Let's hope we can.
And by the way, that's what people are saying at home. They're over this Russian thing. Yep. They're talking about prescription drugs. They're talking about health care, and they're talking about immigration. Guys, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
All right.
Great to see you today. And the president really earns you a debt of gratitude for standing by him. Meanwhile, straight ahead, Adam Schiff said he's had it.
There's clear evidence.
A New York City cop, former Secret Service agent, and author of Spygate, the attempted sabotage of Donald J. Trump. Dan, Mr. Schiff's talking about all that evidence. Why couldn't Robert Mueller find it?
Because there wasn't any, Steve. There was never any evidence. You know, I've been seeing a bunch of tweets this morning from blue checkmark liberals and anti-Trump fake conservatives out there, and they keep saying this. Well, you know, the system worked. There was a serious allegation out there, and they investigated it, and they didn't find anything. No, the system never works, Steve, ever. There was never any credible evidence that any of this happened. Steve, if you, Brian, or Ainsley's entire lives were disrupted because you were accused of a bank robbery you never committed, and your friends and family and the network of people around you were bankrupted, hauled into court, and raided at 6 o'clock in the morning over a bank robbery you had nothing to do with, as a matter of fact, a bank robbery that never even happened in your neighborhood, you would be furious. Adam Schiff should resign in disgrace. Him and Eric Swalwell humiliated themselves, the United States Congress, the United States itself on a national stage, accusing a sitting United States president of effectively treason. He should sign a citizen's contract to never enter the political realm again. He should engage in charity work for the rest of his life to try to redeem his broken, sorry soul. The only redemption for this whole thing I have is that the Lord Almighty, he will have to answer to him one day for his disgraceful conduct for the last 2 years.
Dan, he's not the only one. You have Tom Perez saying there was a mountain of evidence. You have Senator Blumenthal. Evidence is pretty clear. Swalwell, you mentioned, string of evidence. Jerry Nadler, we know there was collusion. And now he's saying can't rely on it. Possibly hasty partisan interpretation of the report and not so-called total exoneration that the president says. So he's not alone. The Democrats are spreading this message because they've seen the report and they don't like the results.
You know, Ainsley, in business, they have an expression. When you've had a really bad quarter, they say, listen, let's just take a bath with the stockholders. In other words, let's just pile all the bad information into one report, get it out there, let the stock take a beating and move on. It's time for the media to take a bath. Drop the L, fellas. Right. Schiff, Nadler, politicians, the media class, who have, by the way, listen, I get it. I work here now, but I'm not kissing this outlet's butt here at all. I don't need to. We were the only ones that played this straight, ever. The only ones that played this straight. The media, CNN, MSNBC, were all in on the collusion hoax. I occasionally saw Chiron in an airport when CNN was on, the only place their tens of viewers can see it. And it was constant, nonstop collusion, as if this actually happened. Fellas, ladies, take the loss. It's over. You got worked. There is no evidence. This is a complete hoax, and you bought in on it.
I read an opinion column on the CNN section today, and it said, keep in mind when you look at this picture. They said this: investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government. They said this: look at the word. He does not explain, Barr does not explain that Mueller meant by establish or legal standard he may have used. So by Barr putting in the word establish, they think it opens up a possible inquiry.
Brian, this is complete, utter desperation. This isn't like grasping at straws. This is just complete humiliation on their part. I read that. Not only that, they're also claiming the president is not vindicated from obstruction, as if they couldn't read the same 4-page report I did. He was vindicated completely. Attorney General Barr and Rosenstein. By the way, Brian, Rosenstein, the same guy who signed the fourth FISA.
So smart to keep him there, right? So smart to keep him there in the final report, because they would have said that Barr told him to take a walk and did it himself. But instead he said, stick around, write this with me.
You stole my thunder, brother. What a genius move. Rod Rosenstein's signature is now on 2 critical documents. The fourth FISA, which gave them the authority to spy on the Trump team. In other words, he did something wrong here. And the exoneration letter from the Department of Justice, where his name is in there, indicating he said there's nothing to this, let's move on. And one more thing on the obstruction charge. They said also, they didn't even consider the fact that the president couldn't be indicted according to OLC, the Office of Legal Counsel.
That's a good point.
In other words, they looked at it anyway. Because even though the president couldn't be indicted, and they still could come up with no legitimately prosecutable charge of obstruction. The media is making this up, and although they had no credibility left, now they're just completely embarrassing themselves, misreading that 4-page letter.
It's like the Rams complaining that they lost the Super Bowl. They were crushed. They lost. It's over.
It's over, right? Move on. It wasn't the ref's call. You lost by 600 points. Move on. The game is over. It's not the ref. It's you.
All right. It was such a big day. I almost thought you'd wear a tie, but I was mistaken. Dan, thanks so much.
Ain't happening.
I didn't think so.
Thank you, Dan.
All right, straight ahead. Ken Starr served as independent counsel during the Clinton presidency, and he says the rule of law has triumphed. He joins us live next with some surprising music.
Wounded during a traffic stop on Friday. He leaves behind a wife. Suspect Facundo Chavez is behind bars on attempted capital murder that will be upgraded to capital murder. Authorities will ask for the death penalty. Herrera is the 27th officer killed in the line of duty this year. A heart-stopping moment when a father pushes his little girl out of the way as a car blows through a crosswalk. You can see in the top corner of your screen, the red car there speeds right at them. The dad shoves his 11-year-old daughter and is knocked to the ground. This happened in Los Angeles. He broke his leg. The girl only had scratches. The father says he is not a hero, just a dad. Police are looking for the driver who never stopped. Frightening scene there. Let's look at your headlines. Steve?
That was a close call. All right, Jillian, thank you. Robert Mueller's special counsel clearing the president of any Russia collusion. A decision our next guest says is a total vindication for the rule of law in our constitutional democracy.
Fox News contributor Ken Starr served as the independent counsel investigating Bill Clinton, as everybody knows, joins us now. Ken, the way this came down, Friday the announcement, Saturday the read, Sunday the summary, are you okay with that process?
Absolutely. This is exactly the way it should be done. Bill Barr, an attorney general who's honorable, who goes by the law, not by politics, did exactly what he was called on to do by the governing regulations under which Bob Mueller was appointed. He's going by the book.
Well, you were chancellor and president at Baylor. So in addition to your judicial background, you also have an educational background. So what kind of a grade would you give Mr. Mueller? Because he's getting mixed reviews.
Well, incomplete. He did a fine job, and I know there are lots of criticisms, but let's leave all that aside. That's the rearview mirror. Look, we are where we are, which is Bob Mueller did this incredibly thorough investigation, and now there are no indictments. That's what a prosecutor is supposed to do. No indictments, no charges. So that's it. It's over. Okay. But with respect to obstruction, he gets an incomplete, and he kicked that over to Bill Barr. Bill, showing his wisdom, said, okay, Bob Mueller, you've been reporting to Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General who appointed you. The two of us are going to review your paper. We're going to complete the paper for you. And they found, and I think given what we know in the public domain, there was no obstruction of justice whatsoever.
So is that how this works? Who makes the decision that there is no obstruction? Were they supposed to just read the report and then give a summary of what Mueller came up with? Or were they supposed to decide whether or not the president broke the law?
No, it really was Bob Mueller's responsibility to come to a decision. But on the other hand, we've got the very important fact that under the Justice Department understanding of our Constitution, the president cannot be indicted in any. So it's an odd situation. I understand that. But the way the report came to Bill Barr as our Attorney General, it's difficult. There's evidence here and there's evidence there. As I said, this is sort of a Hamlet-like, I don't know what to do. So I'm going to, again, kick it to the fifth floor of the Justice Department.
Right. How do you get through 675 pages in a day?
Hey, you can do that because you're not reading it alone. Because this is one of the things people just don't understand. This is not Bill Barr and Rod Rosenstein all cloistered right into some library carrel somewhere. They have great assistants, career prosecutors, and I want to emphasize, dadgummit, too many people have been criticizing the career people at the Justice Department. Are there some bad apples? Of course. But the career people at the Justice Department have been advising Bill Barr and Rod Rosenstein, and look, they've come up with what I think is the correct conclusion. No obstruction of justice by the President of the United States.
All right. Ken Starr, we thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks,
from down
Ken.
in Waco.
Hey, you're welcome.
Go pick up his book, Contempt, a memoir of the Clinton investigation. Ken, thanks.
Thank you, Ken. 48 minutes after.
Thank you.
There's a picture of the book. 48 minutes after the top of the hour. While all the attention has been on Russia, we want to end the show with an American hero today on National Medal of Honor Day. Sergeant Leroy Petrie joins us live coming up.
But first, good morning to you, sir. First, Bill Hammer joins us live with a preview of his lead story, which I think I know.
I think you're right on it, actually. Good show. Good morning, everybody. The day after the report that America's been waiting now for 2 years, we'll get the first reaction from the White House. Sarah Sanders is our guest.
In Afghanistan, an enemy grenade detonated in his hand, leaving him severely injured. His incredible act of valor is credited with saving the lives of his fellow Rangers.
He is one of more than 3,500 Medal of Honor recipients. 72 are living. And today on National Medal of Honor Day, we celebrate heroes like the man sitting next to us. Joining us now is Master Sergeant Leroy Petrie. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
What does that medal mean to you?
To me, it represents all those who have served, are currently serving, and especially those who paid the ultimate sacrifice.
And when you received this award, it was for something that happened in Afghanistan back in 2008?
Yes, on Memorial Day.
On Memorial Day of all days. And you are in the process of saving the lives of your fellow Army Rangers, and there's a grenade. It comes in here, and you don't even think twice. You just pick it up, and you go to throw it. You know, it's one of those fight or flight things. Picking up a grenade thrown at you is probably the last thing the average person would do, but not you that day.
I looked at the guys around me as my brothers, as my children, and I had a responsibility to their families to do the best I could to bring them home alive. And if it meant giving mine, then I was going to do it.
Wow. 8 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. First of all, thank you so much.
Thank you.
What does Medal of Honor Day mean to you?
To me, it's a day of recognition for all those who have portrayed courage. It's a representation, just like the medal itself, of not only the recipients, but the uniform and the men and women and their families that sacrificed and continue to sacrifice today. I tell my children, Dad's retired. The ones that are still currently serving are the heroes that are still protecting us.
Wow. Well, how many kids?
4 kids.
Awesome.
Got a big family.
They're grown kids, though.
Yeah. After you lost your hand, you had the opportunity to retire, but you stayed in the service for 6 more years.
I think it was the inspiration of somebody took care of me while I was going through rehab, and I looked at if I got out, you can't get back in. It's a lot harder, and I wanted to do that for someone else. I said, if I can't go to the front lines, I want to help those that are coming back and their families.
You show the folks at home your art. That is amazing, the technology.
I tell them this is a conversation starter.
It was a complete and total exoneration. President Trump is wrong. This report does not amount to a so-called total exoneration.
And that report needs to be made public ASAP so we can evaluate the body of evidence on the issue of conspiracy and look at why Bob Mueller decided not to indict.
The very people who for 2 years have been accusing Donald Trump of treason, who have accused him of working with Vladimir Putin, would themselves be the ones responsible for giving Vladimir Putin his greatest victory over American democracy.
It's a good day for America that this is resolved. It's a good day for the country. It's a good day for the president. But we did have 2 years of this, which took a lot of time and a lot of attention away from other things that could be accomplished.
I want the whole damn report, because nobody, especially this president, is above the law.
The American people have a right to know whether their president is a crook.
Democrats have tried to use it to delegitimize this president. They have lied to the American public. Chairman Schiff and Chairman Nadler have said that there were going to be charges of collusion. The Democrats owe the president an apology.
We will hear from White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders in just a moment. But first, Doug McKelway, live at the Justice Department this morning. Doug, what can we expect today?
Well, probably not a lot happening here at the Department of Justice. We do know that Attorney General Barr has left home for the morning. He is en route to work as we speak right now. But the process of scrubbing the Mueller report has now begun. I'm told it could take some time. Keep in mind that it involves secret grand jury testimony. And for everybody who has been indicted or who was found guilty or who copped a plea deal with the federal government, there are many, many more people who were completely exonerated in grand jury proceedings. And they need to be protected. They need to be legally protected, and that's why the scrubbing of the Mueller report needs to happen. The action today, as you hinted, will likely be on Capitol Hill, where Democrats want this report to be released in full. They are honing in on Barr's letter that found Barr and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, quote, have concluded that the evidence developed during the special counsel's investigation is not sufficient to establish that this president committed an obstruction of justice offense. Here's House Judiciary Committee Chairman Gerald Nadler.
We will ask the Attorney General to testify before the House Judiciary Committee. We will demand the release of the full report. The American people are entitled to a full accounting of the president's misconduct referenced by the special counsel.
And the White House is pushing back really hard on this. They're not just content with the president being exonerated at this point in time. It appears that they want a little bit of revenge here. Here's Kellyanne Conway.
Then you have Adam Schiff. Talk about an oxymoron. This man heads the Intelligence Committee in the House. He said, quote, he believed that the scandal was of a size and a scope probably bigger than Watergate and that there's plenty of evidence of collusion. He ought to resign today.
Republicans want this full report released as well, and they are reminding Democrats to be careful of what you wish for. They are of the belief that if this thing were to be examined truly in full, it would lead back to the Obama administration, to a highly politicized Justice Department, to the Clinton campaign, to Fusion GPS, the Perkins Coie law firm, and on and on. Sandra, back to you.
Doug McKelway outside the DOJ. Thank you.
Take a look at the numbers from the Mueller report now. The special counsel lasting 675 days. That's 1 year, 10 months, and 6 days in time. 500 search warrants issued, some 500 witnesses interviewed. Mueller's team employed 19 lawyers and 40 FBI agents. The investigation to date cost $25 million.
And here's what you need to know about Attorney General William Barr, who will determine how much of Robert Mueller's report will actually be made public. Barr served as Attorney General under President George H.W. Bush. He was confirmed by the Senate back in February to serve as President Trump's Attorney General. He has a long working relationship with Special Counsel Robert Mueller. Barr telling lawmakers during his confirmation process that he is committed to transparency and that he would not allow the White House to edit Mueller's report.
For the reaction now from the White House, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders joins me now from the North Lawn. And Sarah, good morning to you and welcome back on what has turned out to be a rather significant Monday morning. I want to go through a number of things that I've heard from Democrats in a moment here. But first, what the president said was talked about an illegal takedown that failed. When will we hear from him today, Sarah?
The president's got a number of meetings today, and we'll see if some of those open up where he decides to address the press directly. Again, he did so twice yesterday, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does that again today. Okay, so we'll wait on that. With regard to releasing the full report, is the White House opposed to that, yes or no? Again, as the president has said, he wants full transparency in this process. We absolutely know and have said for over 2.5 years there was no collusion. Now Bob Mueller is also saying the same thing. But that decision's up to the Attorney General, and the president is leaving it up to him at this point in time. You wouldn't object to it, though. That's what I'm hearing from your answer. Yes. Again, we want to make sure that I think some of the biggest things that we have to look at is that we're protecting the office of the president. And it's not just about this president, but it's about the future as well, and making sure things like executive privilege and sources and methods and things like that are protected. And that's why the Attorney General will look at this and make the best decision, not just for this president, but this Attorney General is going to make the best decision for America, and he's going to make the best decision for the office of the president. Okay, did the AG Bill Barr, did he confer with the White House on his summary before it went to the Hill? No, there was not a discussion about details and like a negotiation process of any type between the White House and the Department of Justice. Did you see it got the information about the same time that Congress received the letter the White House was given, so about the notification. About 3:40 in the afternoon on Sunday then. What is the president's reaction to this obstruction non-collusion? Conclusion, I should say, the obstruction thing. Be careful, that's a tough one to say. I get it. Yeah. What's the reaction from the president on that bottom line from Bill Barr? The bottom line is exactly what we've said it was for 2.5 years. There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. And frankly, I think the Democrats need to be really careful here. So far, what they're doing and what they're saying, they should be embarrassed by. They have said for 2 years, they have repeatedly and breathlessly attacked the president and perpetuated this malicious lie that the president was some sort of foreign agent and working with the Russian government in order to win the election, when really all of the interference between Russia and the election took place under the Obama administration. Let's not forget that Clapper and Comey and Brennan were the ones leading the intelligence community when these things took place, and that Obama was the president at that time. They knew about it. They did nothing to stop it, and I think they need to be very careful about pushing too far down that road. Is it your hunch then that the answers to everything you're raising right now will be satisfied in this Inspector General's report that could be out in May or June, 2 or 3 months from now? I think everything should be satisfied in the report that just took place. Bob Mueller spent 2 years, as you put those numbers up earlier, 2,800 subpoenas, over 500 witnesses, millions and millions of pages of documents were given to the Mueller team, $25 million wasted in taxpayer dollars to tell us what we've been saying for 2 years. This didn't take place. There was no collusion. The president won and is sitting in the building behind me today because he was a better candidate. He had a better message. He had a better
vision for our country, and he outworked his opponent. They have failed at every single step of the way to defeat this president, and they've done it again. And this time they did it at the sake of the American people by putting them through this outrageous process, by wasting their money and making this such a big part of everyday life for Democrats in the media,
but
when they should be focusing on the economy and ISIS and everything else.
The next leg in the story is why so many people chose to believe the dossier in the first place.
Because they wanted to, Bill. It's real simple.
And
they wanted to. They didn't want to believe that Donald Trump had defeated them. They didn't want to believe their own failure. But this report further confirms what we all knew in November of 2016. Donald Trump won, and he won decisively, he won fairly, and he won because he was better.
But my question is, will the IG conclude that? That's what we're trying to figure out in the next leg of the story. Why
I don't know how anybody could come to any other conclusion.
To believe it. All right, another question here. You're hearing from Democrats a lot. Mueller concluded that Russia tried repeatedly to interfere with our election, but nobody took the bait. And that was one of the conclusions from the Mueller report yesterday, what Bill Barr put out. What has the administration ordered to protect the integrity of the next election 18 or so months from now, Sarah?
If you'll remember, Bill, not too long ago, we had a number of senior administration officials come to the briefing room and walk through in detail how we're taking a whole of government approach, DOD, DHS, DOJ, all of the intelligence community working hand in glove to make sure that what happened in 2016 doesn't continue to happen. And we're looking at and working with all of the state and local officials and making sure that we do everything we can to try to prevent this. Unlike the previous administration, we're actually taking steps to prevent this from happening again, and we're very hopeful in that process, and we're going to continue to work across the board with all of the departments and agencies to make sure it doesn't.
And when will we hear more about that, Sarah?
Again, Department of Homeland Security is one of the leads on this this entire whole of government approach. I would certainly encourage you to talk to them, but I'd also encourage you to go back and look at the briefing. I think your network covered it, but a lot of networks did not on the day it took place. They spent about 30 minutes walking through in detail all of the different steps that the Trump administration is doing to protect and uphold the integrity of our elections.
Last point here. James Comey sent out a tweet yesterday, looked like he was in a redwood forest, and his message was so many questions as he looked up in the skies above him. Lindsey Graham responded to that saying, could not agree more. See you soon. When do we hear from James Comey next, Sarah?
Look, I think that Lindsey Graham said it best. See you soon. He was one of the people that failed to do his job. He lied throughout the process. He leaked information that should never have been public. James Comey has been a disgrace.